Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to Christopher Balkerin doing a live right here on YouTube. Folks, if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. And the reason why is because I'm trying to carve out this space on YouTube where Canadians can talk about the issues that are affecting you. I don't feel like our government's doing that. I don't feel like our media is doing that. There are so many changes that are happening right now in your communities, and you're trying to figure out where you can talk about it without being looked at as xenophobic, racist, etc. And this is the place to do it because my goal is to do deep dives on policy, explain policy so that it's easier to understand, and shed some light on what the government's doing and why, so that you can feel better prepared for conversations with your families, friends, and your MPs and MPPs. So like, subscribe, share, tell all your friends. This is the place where we can have open and honest conversations as Canadians. Okay, so one thing that I've repeated on my channel and my deep dives on immigration to Canada is Canada is world class when it comes to settlement. Meaning, if you're a newcomer to Canada, you settle in Canada, there's great settlement services. Federal governments, provincial governments, cities, they all have budgets on heritage events and cultural festivals and settlement services, making sure that you from a distant country can connect with your community, that there are programs and services for your community, and that these are well funded. Canada's world class for that. And you look at Ipsos Reid polls, you look at other polls, it's pretty amazing to see how many newcomers feel welcomed in Canada. I remember reading a poll like 98% of newcomers feel like they're welcomed in Canada. So from a settlement perspective, I think it's safe to say we're crushing it. But there's a big issue happening in Canada right now, and that is integration. Integration of newcomers into Canadian culture, norms, values, etc. And that is actually something that politicians don't want to talk about, our media doesn't want to talk about, because if they do, they may feel like it's xenophobic or racist for some reason. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'll make this quick. But integration, to me, is as important as settlement, if not more important. Because when you think of newcomers coming to Canada, you'd like to think that they're going to settle and grow their families and stay here for the long term. After all, whether people like to believe this or not, there is this economic play that Canada has made on its decision to bring in immigrants. On the economic immigrant side, there's actually an economic play, like an actual, point-based system. But even on the temporary foreign worker international mobility program side, there also is an economic play there as well. And the play is like, we need your labor. And we can debate that forever, but ultimately there's an economic reason Canada's bringing you in. Okay, so Canada then owes it somewhat to the immigrant for settlement services, but then there's this shared responsibility between the newcomer and Canada to integrate. Now, where am I going with this? Well, the city of Brampton in 2023 recognized the caste system, which is a social hierarchy in India, as a protected class from discrimination. So why would they do that? Well, we know approximately half the population in Brampton is South Asian, and in parts of India, the caste system is still very prevalent. It's a social hierarchy that organizes society, in some cases by skin color, and determines who you can marry, what jobs you can get, schools you can go to, etc. And in parts of India today, it's still very much the thing. In Punjab region, where the majority of Indian newcomers to Canada originate from, the caste system is prevalent. In my latest video, I talk about a court case in British Columbia where a Sikh taxi driver felt discriminated against because of the caste system in British Columbia. He was called derogatory names. And the BC government, the BC courts saw that as a form of discrimination, and Surrey, BC in April 2023 added the caste system to its list of peoples protected from discrimination. Brampton soon followed in June 2023, and it got me thinking as I was doing this research that does this further integration or not? And I can honestly say that I don't feel like it does, and I'll tell you why. The reason why I don't think it does is because Canada does not have the caste system. It is foreign to Canada, obviously. And us adopting that kind of puts us down a pathway where we're making even more concessions to the groups that are being brought in. And what do I mean by concessions? Now, look, it's not foreign to think that any country bringing in hundreds of thousands of people from one area of the world obviously would want to make sure that policies are reflective of their realities. But when we start bringing in protected classes based on a social hierarchy that exists outside Canada, I think what we're saying is indirectly we're saying we will accommodate as much as possible, but we won't spend that same energy making sure you integrate into Canada. And this is where many Canadians get off the bus when it comes to these types of policies. You know, it's easy to add just another class on the list of those that are protected from discrimination. That's easy. It's an easy policy fix. It might win you over some voters. Great. But the potential for long-term alienation by other groups in Canada that are not connected, especially Canadians who are wondering, well, what about these groups that are not protected? What about these groups that are not protected? And then the Canadians that say, hang on, where's the integration with our cultural norms and values? Where's the integration with our society? We don't have the caste system in Canada. Why would the government do this? And so that's where it can lead to some conflict, and it can even lead in some cases to xenophobia, racism, etc. I need not remind anyone of the protests happening in Europe against immigration, against more immigration. Those are real. Those are real protests. Many of them say send them back. I mean, many immigrants say it is very scary being an immigrant in parts of Europe today. Now, I want to just end this by just kind of saying openly, this isn't about, figuring out what the right mix is. But I think Canada has kind of turned its back a little bit on the integration piece. Now, what do I mean by that? There are social norms and socially accepted behavior in parts of India that are not socially accepted in Canada. I was watching a video on a documentary on Mumbai and the subway system there. And one thing that I found was the orientation to getting on a subway involves, crammed subways in personal space, pushing to get on. Now, I'm not saying this is common amongst Indians in Toronto, but what I am saying is that if you are from that culture where that is the norm, it makes sense why you may want to continue that in any host country without realizing that pushing to get on public transit is actually a form of physical assault and is not a social norm in our country. And so the question has to remain, while we're doing settlement services, what are we doing about integration to make sure that people who are coming here feel like they're integrating into the society's norms in Canada? This is challenging. It's challenging for Canadians, but we need to push our governments to make sure this gets enough attention. Because, again, it's very easy to put forward policies on protected classes, put forward more funding for settlement, more diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. On the flip side, there has to be some form of integration. And integration means having tough conversations about, this is our culture, these are our values, these are our norms in our society, these are how we treat women. You know, many immigrants also struggle with our understanding of the LGBTQ population. And while it's not necessarily as reported, this can become a social fissure with newcomers coming to Canada and not fully supporting the LGBTQ population, which can lead to clustering. And clustering does exist, obviously, Surrey, BC, Brampton, Ontario. These are clusters of communities, of South Asian communities. The challenge with clustering is that there's no broader interaction with Canadian society unless that person's working outside those areas, etc. And even then, they're working and they're coming back home. So volunteering, being part of different communities in some meaningful way can help lead to greater integration. That's not as nearly prominent and as front of mind for our political leaders as settlement services, as continuing to protect classes, etc. So I'd love to know what you think. The caste system in Brampton, a protected class now. Let me know what you think. Does this further integration or detract from it? I don't think it does personally, but I'd love to know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Always. Also, subscribe, like, share, tell all your friends. We need to have open and honest conversations in Canada, and we have to have the courage to do so. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next one.